Reddit, I'm not one to exaggerate or make up wild stories, but what happened to me last week left me shaking my head for days. I never thought I'd have to use my FBI credentials for something so ridiculous. But hey, when life hands you a bag of entitled neighbors and fake authority figures, you've got to do what you've got to do. I've lived in a suburban neighborhood for about 2 years now. It's your typical middle-class area with neat lawns, quiet streets, and a well-maintained community that has a homeowners association, or HOA. I'll be honest, I wasn't thrilled about the idea of an HOA, but it was either that or live in a building with paper-thin walls. So I put up with the usual rules: no lawn ornaments, no excessive noise after 9 p.m., and the most ridiculous of them all, no parking on the street between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. Sure, it's annoying, but it's not like I'm going to lose sleep over it. Now, I'm not some saint who follows every rule to the letter, I'll admit. I've parked on the street once or twice when I was running late or if my driveway was full, but I've never had any issues, not until that one Thursday afternoon. I was working from home that day, my usual routine of coffee in hand, headphones on, typing away at my computer. Around 2 p.m., I heard a knock on my door. Nothing unusual, so I figured it was either a package delivery or one of my neighbors. I opened the door, and there stood 2 men in dark blue uniforms. They were wearing something I'd never seen before, shirts that read HOA Police across the front. I blinked a few times, thinking maybe I was hallucinating. The taller guy looked like he'd just walked out of a bad cop movie, all stern and serious. His partner, shorter and stockier, had the look of someone who spent way too much time at the gym and not enough time reading. "Can I help you?" I asked, genuinely confused. "We're with the HOA Enforcement Division," the taller one said, holding up a badge that looked like it was printed off a cheap website. It didn't have the usual official markings you'd expect, just a poorly done logo and the words HOA Police under it. "We've received a complaint about your parking violation." Now, I knew exactly what they were talking about. Earlier that week, I'd parked on the street when my driveway was blocked by my wife's car. I had figured it was no big deal. After all, it was after the morning rush hour and I wasn't blocking anyone's way. But apparently the HOA had a problem with it, and these guys were here to enforce it. I didn't take them seriously at first. I mean, HOA police? Was this some kind of joke? "I'm sorry, I didn't realize parking on the street was such a serious offense," I said, trying to keep things light. "Can I get your names, or is this some kind of prank?" The taller one straightened up. "This is no joke. We've already issued several warnings, and now it's time for you to face the consequences. We're here to arrest you for repeated violations." I was taken aback. Arrest me? For parking on the street? I was about to tell them that they must have had the wrong guy, but before I could open my mouth, the shorter one stepped forward. "Yeah, we've had enough of you, buddy. This is the 3rd time we've had to warn you. You've made things difficult for everyone around here. The rules are clear." I was honestly dumbfounded. The idea of these 2 random people showing up at my door, claiming to be some kind of HOA enforcement officers, was absolutely absurd. And arrest? For parking on the street? I had to stay calm and figure out what the heck was going on. "I'm not trying to make things difficult for anyone," I said, my voice starting to get a little more serious. "But I'm not going anywhere until I talk to someone who actually has the authority to—" Before I could finish my sentence, the taller one interrupted. "You don't get to make demands here, sir. We're authorized to detain you until further notice." "Detain me?" I echoed, raising my eyebrows. "For parking on the street? That's insane." The 2 of them looked at each other, and I noticed a flicker of hesitation in the shorter one's eyes. Something didn't feel right about this whole situation. But I couldn't put my finger on it. "Look, if you don't mind, I'll just go inside and call the real HOA. You can wait out here," I said, my voice getting firmer. That's when the taller guy stepped forward and tried to grab my arm. "Not so fast," he said, his grip tight around my wrist. "We don't have time to wait for you to make phone calls. You're coming with us." I'd had enough. For a moment, I just stood there trying to process what was happening. I'm not a confrontational person, but this was crossing a line, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't some random guy who didn't know how to deal with this situation. I was an FBI agent. I don't usually go around announcing my job to random strangers, but something told me these guys were more than just misguided HOA enforcers. I knew I had to escalate this before things got any worse. I calmly reached into my back pocket and pulled out my FBI badge, showing it to them. "Do you know what this is?" I asked, my voice cold and controlled. They both froze. The taller one looked at my badge like it was a snake ready to strike. "Well, what's that supposed to mean?" The shorter one stammered. "It means you're trespassing on federal property," I said, stepping back into my house. "And if you don't leave now, you're going to find yourselves dealing with more than just parking violations. You're going to be dealing with the FBI." They both looked at each other, clearly rattled, but neither of them moved. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, trying to figure out what their next move should be. "Look, we're just doing our job," the taller one said, trying to regain his composure. "We were hired to handle this kind of thing." I raised an eyebrow. "Hired by who exactly?" "That's none of your business," the shorter guy muttered, clearly uneasy. I wasn't about to let this go. I called my partner and told him to come over, making sure I emphasized that I needed backup. While I waited, I kept the door open just enough to keep an eye on them. Neither of them seemed eager to make a move, and I figured that was a good sign. When my partner arrived, he walked straight up to the two of them, flashing his own FBI badge. "You guys want to explain what's going on here?" he asked, his tone professional but firm. The two HOA police guys immediately started stammering. Their confidence from earlier had completely evaporated. They were clearly not expecting a federal agent to show up. Finally, the taller one admitted that they weren't actually part of any HOA enforcement team. They were just two guys who had been scamming people in the neighborhood, pretending to be part of some fake HOA task force in exchange for fines they'd pocketed. They'd been targeting people who seemed like they wouldn't push back. My parking violation was just the last straw, and when they saw that I wasn't going to just roll over, they thought they could intimidate me into paying some ridiculous fee. It didn't take long for the police to arrive and arrest them. After a few questions, they were taken away in handcuffs. The whole ordeal felt surreal, like I had been living in some kind of bad dream for the last hour. So, what's the lesson here? Don't let anyone walk all over you, especially when they try to use fake authority to intimidate you. And always, always carry your FBI badge, because you never know when you'll need it for something completely ridiculous. But hey, at least I got to do something useful for once.